She was paid $20 to ruin a blind date, and unexpectedly, the millionaire CEO fell in love. Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. $20. That's all I've got, Lila said, holding out the crumpled bill as if she were offering a diamond. Harper raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms, still wearing her restaurant apron like it was a suit of armor. Only $20? You're rich, my friend. That barely covers my emotional rent. Please, Lila begged, clasping her hands like she was performing a third-rate magic trick. My parents are the rich ones, not me. You just need to ruin the date. 10 minutes, tops. Pretend you hate me, that I'm awful, that I snore like a jackhammer. Make something up. Just make sure he never wants to see me again. It was Saturday night in Chicago. The restaurant where Harper worked, the Ivory Table, was packed with wealthy couples and expensive dinners served with French words. Harper, on the other hand, was paid by the hour, shared an apartment with a dying plant and a gecko. Lila had been her best friend since high school, and now her parents were forcing her to go on a blind date with a promising young man, heir to a fortune, according to her mother. But Lila already had a boyfriend, a broke boyfriend, invisible to her family's elite eyes. The arranged date was a threat, and Harper was the perfect distraction. Okay. Harper took a deep breath and grabbed the bill. But if he leaves before the main course, you owe me an extra strawberry milkshake. Harper walked into the dining room with the confidence of someone who had nothing to lose. Her hair was tied up haphazardly, a notepad in one hand and chaos in her head. She spotted the table in the brightest corner of the room. Lila sat up straight, her smile frozen, her eyes pleading. Next to her, sitting with calm elegance, was the man. Charcoal gray suit, understated watch, and a gaze as steady as it was dangerous. The kind of man who seemed to know exactly how much money was in his account, and never had to worry about it. Harper swallowed. This was supposed to be just a blind date. Why did the guy look like he'd stepped out of a billionaire CEO magazine? She walked up to the table, pretending she knew nothing. "Good evening," she said, forcing an overly bright smile. "My name's Harper, and I'll be taking care of you tonight, or ruining everything, depending on how you look at it." Lila nearly choked on her water. The man, Dylan, just looked up, curious. "What can I get you to drink?" Harper asked, looking straight at Dylan. "Just don't order sparkling water. Lila snores so loudly in her sleep she wakes the upstairs neighbor. Oh, and she snores like a tractor, too. Did you know she talks in her sleep? Full sentences. One time she yelled, 'Give me back my croissant,' at 3 in the morning. The neighbor knocked on the door thinking there was a bakery fight. Dylan raised an eyebrow. "Harper," Lila gasped, pretending to be outraged. "Oh, sorry," Harper said dramatically. "Was I supposed to save that for the third date?" Dylan laughed, a short, quiet, but genuine laugh. "And what would you recommend for dinner?" he asked, still looking at Harper. "Well, I'd recommend something with lots of garlic. Lila loves garlic. She eats 6 cloves a day." Harper smiled. Lila's face turned red. Dylan leaned forward, clearly entertained. "Does she cook?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Cook? The last time she tried to make rice, she created a new form of charcoal. It was an emotional moment. The kitchen cried." Dylan laughed again, this time more freely. Lila looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Harper went on for a few minutes, spinning one embarrassing story after another. Dylan didn't look repulsed. He looked amused. His eyes stayed on Harper. He barely glanced at Lila. Finally, Harper walked away, heading back to the counter with a triumphant smile. Mission accomplished. What she didn't expect was that Dylan's gaze would still be following her when she turned around. Hours later, in the small apartment Harper shared with Lila and the nearly dead plant named Steve, the two sat in pajamas, ice cream in their laps, laughing about the night. "It worked," Lila cheered. "He didn't even finish dessert, said he had urgent commitments, left all formal. I told you the exploding lasagna accident would seal the deal. Harper, you're a genius who works for tips, but thank you." They clinked their spoons like glasses. The plant on the windowsill seemed to sway in approval. What Harper didn't know was that the next day, Dylan, the calm-eyed, faint-smiled millionaire heir, was feeling very intrigued. The next morning, Harper woke up at 10, with her hair looking like a rebellious bird's nest, and the feeling she had forgotten something important. Oh, right. Work. "Steve, you could at least warn me when I oversleep," she muttered to the plant, which was still committed to its mission of slowly dying on the windowsill. On Sundays, the ivory table was a different place. Fewer dazzled couples, more families trying to impress in-laws, and lonely executives pretending to read financial newspapers while eating alone. Harper liked Sundays. Less drama, more tips born from existential guilt. She tied the apron around her waist and checked the tables in her section. Table 3. A family with 3 kids who had already turned the floor into a battlefield of crumbs. Table 5. An elderly couple debating whether the sauce had too much salt or not enough love. Table 7, empty as it usually stayed until... Good afternoon. Harper almost dropped her tray. It was him, the man from yesterday's date. She hadn't even paid much attention to his name in all the confusion. "You," she said, pointing at him with her pen as if identifying a suspect. "What are you doing here?" "Having lunch," he replied with that restrained smile that was already starting to annoy Harper simply because it was far too charming. "This is a restaurant, isn't it?" "It is, but..." Harper hesitated. "Yesterday you ran out of here like you'd seen the ghost of Italian cuisine. I thought I'd traumatized you forever." "Actually," Dylan sat down comfortably in the chair, as if he had all day, "I came back for the food." "Really?" Harper raised a skeptical eyebrow. "You didn't even taste anything yesterday." "Exactly. I got curious." Harper studied him for a moment. He was wearing a light blue shirt, no tie, and looked more relaxed than the night before. Less formal, more human. "Well," she said, picking up her notepad, "what will you have? Just so you know, our special sauce today is chaos seasoned with irony, a house specialty." Dylan laughed, a genuine sound that made Harper blink in surprise. Chaos and irony? Interesting combination. That's what gives life its flavor. Without it, everything gets very dull. "And you know a lot about life's seasonings?" "Well, I've been working here for 3 years serving people who make more in a month than I do in a year. If that doesn't teach you about irony, nothing will." Dylan tilted his head, genuinely interested. "And the chaos?" "Oh, chaos is my specialty," Harper said dramatically. "Sometimes I can even ruin a romantic date in 15 minutes using nothing but embarrassing stories and creativity. It's an art form." "I saw that. Very impressive." Harper stopped, pen suspended in the air. "Wait. You thought that was impressive? Most people find it disturbing. Most people are boring." There was a moment of silence where Harper didn't quite know what to say. Compliments weren't exactly her area of expertise. "Anyway," she cleared her throat, "what do you want to eat? And don't say you choose, because that's too much responsibility for someone who can barely pick which socks to wear in the morning. But I do want you to choose. Why? Because you work here. You must know what's really good." Harper stared at him, looking for signs of sarcasm. She found none. "All right, but if you complain, remember it was your idea." "Noted." Harper scribbled down the order and walked away, but not before noticing Dylan watching her as she moved. Not the typical bored customer look, but something different. Curious, interested. In the kitchen, she handed the order to Marcus, the chef. "Table 7 wants the salmon with passion fruit sauce and the arugula salad with walnuts," she said. "The guy at table 7 hasn't stopped looking at you since he got here," Marcus said as he seasoned a pan. "Do you know him?" "Sort of. It's complicated." "Complicated like psychotic ex-boyfriend, or complicated like millionaire heir falling for the waitress?" Harper laughed. "Complicated like, I have no idea what's going on." When she came back with the drink, Dylan was reading something on his phone, but he immediately put it away when he saw her. "So," she said, setting the glass on the table, "while you're waiting for your food, how about telling me why you really came back here?" "And I'm not accepting for the food as an answer." "Why not?" "Because yesterday you seemed more interested in me than in Lila. And that's strange, considering it was supposed to be a romantic date with her." Dylan smiled. "You're very direct. It's a gift. Comes with the sarcasm and the ability to balance 5 plates on my left arm. Impressive resume." "Thank you. Now answer the question." Dylan hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "You said something yesterday that caught my attention." "I said a lot of things yesterday, most of them embarrassing and made up." About your friend burning rice and creating a new species of charcoal. Harper laughed. Oh, that one wasn't made up. Lila really is a danger in the kitchen. But the way you told it, you have a knack for it. For embarrassing people in public? Thanks, I guess. For telling stories. For making people laugh. It's a rare talent. Harper stopped wiping the table, which was already clean. You're strange. Why? Most of the guys who come here complain if the water isn't the perfect temperature. You're here complimenting my ability to create drama at a dinner table. Maybe I'm not like most of the guys who come here. Before Harper could answer, Marcus rang the kitchen bell. The dish was ready. Saved by the bell, she muttered, heading to get the food. The salmon was perfect, as always. Marcus had golden hands in the kitchen, even if he was a professional grumbler. Your choice, he said, setting the plate in front of Dylan. If you don't like it, it's entirely my fault, and I'll take the consequences. Dylan took a bite. His eyes lit up. This is amazing. Marcus will be happy to hear that. He's always saying no one appreciates real food anymore. And you, do you cook? Harper almost laughed. Me? My cooking skills are limited to instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, but at least I have a decent palate. Are you sure? You chose this perfectly. Beginner's luck. Dylan kept eating, clearly enjoying every bite. Harper moved on to serve other tables, but every time she glanced toward table 7, he was watching her. Not in a strange or uncomfortable way, but with genuine interest. When she explained to the family at table 3 why they didn't serve regular nuggets, not this strange French thing, Dylan smiled. When she convinced the couple at table 5 to try dessert because life is too short to skip the tiramisu, he nodded in approval. You're popular here, he said when she came back to clear his empty plate. Popular is a fancy word for the waitress who talks too much. I'd say charismatic. You have a very generous vocabulary. Dylan chuckled and signaled for the check. How much do I owe? Harper calculated quickly. $28. Dylan took out his wallet and placed two $50 bills on the table, along with a small, elegant card. The change. Keep it. Harper looked at the money. $72 in tip on a $28 meal? That's a lot. For exceptional service and a perfect menu choice. But take it, Dylan said as he stood up, and read the card after I'm gone. He left with the same calm stride as yesterday, but this time Harper had the feeling something had changed. She picked up the card. Expensive paper. Elegant gold-embossed letters. Dylan Hayes, CEO, Hayes Corporation. Harper read it once, twice, 3 times. Oh my God, she whispered, then louder. Oh my God! Marcus came out from the kitchen. What? Someone die? Worse. Harper held up the card, her voice almost a squeak. I called the CEO of Hayes Corporation a spoiled rich kid last night. Marcus's eyes widened. Hayes Corporation? The company with the skyscraper on Michigan Avenue? The very same. Harper. I know. She covered her face with her hands. I'm a dead woman. He's going to sue me for defamation or something worse. Or, Marcus grinned, he came back here because he likes you. Harper looked at the card again, then at the now empty table 7, then at the outrageous tip still in her hand. This is going to be a lot more complicated than I thought, she murmured. Harper was polishing glasses at the ivory table when her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Calls from unknown numbers usually meant a debt collector or someone trying to sell a vacuum cleaner. Hello? Harper? It's Dylan. She almost dropped the glass she was holding. Dylan? How did you get my number? I asked the manager. I said it was urgent. Urgent? Harper felt her heart race. Did something happen? Are you going to sue me? Because I can explain about last night's comments. I didn't know you were. Harper, breathe. His voice sounded amused. I'm not going to sue you. Actually, I was calling to invite you out. Total silence. Harper checked to see if she was still awake. Out? Like, on a date? As friends, Dylan quickly clarified. I thought you could show me Chicago from a different perspective, away from expensive restaurants and business meetings. Harper looked around the restaurant, trying to process the situation. The multimillionaire CEO was inviting the sarcastic waitress to hang out. This definitely wasn't in the Urban Survival Manual. I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Because you're you and I'm me. We're from completely different worlds. Exactly, Dylan said. That's why it will be interesting. Despite every mental alarm going off, Harper found herself smiling. All right, but I picked the place. Perfect. When? Today after work. Meet me at Millennium Park at 6. I'll be there. 3 hours later, Harper was walking through the park, looking for Dylan. She had traded her work uniform for jeans and a simple blouse, but still felt out of place. This wasn't exactly her natural habitat for a date, even if it was just as friends. She spotted him near Cloud Gate, dressed casually as well. Dark jeans, a gray shirt, and sneakers. He looked less like a CEO and more ordinary. You came, Dylan said with a genuine smile. I said I would. I'm not in the habit of breaking my word. A good quality. So, what's the plan, tour guide? Harper looked around. The park was full of families, tourists, and couples enjoying a Tuesday afternoon. First, we'll see the Crown Fountain. Then we can walk to the lake and... She stopped, noticing the dark clouds gathering overhead. Or maybe we should find somewhere covered. Why? It's a beautiful day. As if the universe wanted to prove Harper right, a raindrop landed on Dylan's nose. Because Chicago has a gift for changing the weather faster than a teenager's mood, Harper said, seconds before the sky opened up above them. The rain started as a drizzle and, within minutes, turned into a downpour worthy of a dramatic movie. Harper and Dylan ran looking for shelter, but every covered spot was already crowded with people who had the same idea. This way, Harper shouted over the sound of the rain, pulling Dylan by the hand. They dashed through wet streets until they reached the building where Harper lived. It wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it had a roof, and at that moment, that felt like luxury. Sorry, Harper said, pushing her soaked hair back as they climbed the stairs. This wasn't exactly how I planned the outing. It's perfect, Dylan replied, and he sounded sincere. Harper opened her apartment door and instantly regretted it. The place was a mess. Clothes on the armchair, books stacked on the floor, and Steve, the plant, looking more dead than alive. Welcome to my palace, she said sarcastically. Sorry about the decor. The style is functional chaos. Dylan stepped inside, looking around with curiosity, not judgment. It's cozy. It's small and messy. It's you, he said simply. And Harper wasn't sure if that was a compliment or just a fact. You're dripping on my floor, she pointed out. I'll get towels. When she came back from the kitchen with 2 clean towels, Dylan was looking over the bookshelf. You read a lot, he said, when I have time, and when I can afford books that aren't used. What do you like to read? Everything. Romance, mystery, biographies. Harper paused. Cookbooks? Dylan turned toward her, interested. Cooking? Harper wrapped the towel around herself, suddenly feeling shy. It's just a hobby. The same hobby that made you pick my favorite dish last night? Maybe. Can I see? Harper hesitated, but went to the shelf and pulled out a worn cookbook with handwritten notes in the margins. It was my dad's, she explained. He had a food truck when I was little. He taught me that cooking is art, science, and love all mixed together. Dylan turned the pages carefully, reading the notes. These recipes are yours? Some. Tweaks, improvements, dreams. Dreams? Harper sighed. I've always wanted to have my own restaurant. Something small and warm, where people feel at home. But dreams don't pay the rent. Why not try? With what money? With what experience? I work as a waitress, not a chef. But you have talent. Talent isn't enough in the real world. Dylan closed the book and looked at her. Have you ever tried? Tried what? Chasing the dream. For real. Harper laughed, but without humor. Dylan, you don't get it. People like me don't open restaurants. People like me serve food in restaurants owned by people like you. That's nonsense. That's reality. They were silent for a moment, the tension thick in the air. I'm hungry, Dylan said at last. Are you cooking, or should we order pizza? Harper glanced toward the tiny kitchen. I can improvise something. Just don't expect miracles. I accept the challenge. Harper rummaged through the fridge and cupboards. There wasn't much, but enough. Pasta, tomatoes, garlic, and some herbs she grew on the windowsill. Dylan sat at the counter, watching her work. Harper started by sautéing garlic in olive oil, adding chopped tomatoes and fresh seasonings. Her movements were fluid, natural. Where'd you learn to do that? Dylan asked. From my dad. He used to say, every dish tells a story. And what story is this one telling? Harper smiled as she stirred the sauce. The story of a waitress trying to impress a CEO with $5 worth of ingredients. It's working. The pasta was ready in 20 minutes. Simple, but perfectly seasoned. Dylan took a bite and closed his eyes. This is amazing. It's just pasta with tomato sauce. No, it's not. This has soul. They ate at the small kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing. Dylan spoke about the pressure of taking over his father's company, about expectations and responsibilities. Harper talked about growing up without much money, but with plenty of love. Sometimes, Dylan said, I envy people like you. Poor people? Harper laughed. Trust me, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. Free people. You can be whoever you want, do whatever you want. As long as I can pay the bills. But you get to choose your own battles. Harper studied him. There was something vulnerable in his expression. And you can't? My battles were chosen before I was born. The moment turned intimate, filled with unexpected honesty. Dylan leaned slightly forward, and Harper felt her heart race. That's when the door flew open. Harper, Lila shouted, clearly drunk. You won't believe the night I've had. She stumbled into the kitchen and stopped abruptly when she saw Dylan. Hi, she said, blinking several times as if trying to focus. You're really handsome. Are you a delivery guy? Harper choked. Lila, because if you are, I need to order a pizza. I'm starving and… Lila tripped and grabbed the table for support. Wait, why are you wearing Marcus's shirt? Lila, this is Dylan, Harper said quickly. Dylan? Lila frowned. Dylan who? The only Dylan I know is that guy who… Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, you're the guy from the date. Dylan gave a polite wave. Hello, Lila. You came back, Lila yelled, then whispered loudly, Harper, he looks really hot today. Lila, you're drunk. I am, but I'm not blind. Lila turned to Dylan. Do you like Harper? Lila. Harper's face turned red. Because she's amazing. She cooks like an angel. She's funny, and once she saved a cat from a tree. Well, the cat actually climbed down on its own, but she tried. Dylan laughed. Good to know. And she's single, Lila went on. Very single, tragically single, like hasn't been kissed in 6 months single. Lila. What? I'm helping. Lila tripped again. You two make a beautiful couple. He's rich, you're poor, just like a soap opera. Harper wished the floor would swallow her whole. I think I'd better go, Dylan said, standing up. No, stay, Lila protested. I'll go to my room and you can keep doing whatever you were doing. And by the look of things, it was something interesting. She gave them an exaggerated wink and staggered toward her room, slamming the door behind her. Harper and Dylan were left in awkward silence. Sorry, Harper murmured. She gets like that when she drinks. It's fine, Dylan smiled. But I think I really should go. You have work early tomorrow. You're right. They walked to the door in silence. Dylan turned before leaving. Thank you for dinner and for the company. This was the best night I've had in a long time. Even with the rain and Lila being drunk, especially because of that. He leaned in, and for a moment Harper thought he was going to kiss her, but instead he gently kissed her forehead. Good night, Harper. And he left, leaving Harper in the doorway, touching the spot where his lips had been, her heart beating faster than it should. In the days after that rain-soaked dinner, Dylan started showing up at the ivory table often enough to get noticed. Not every day, but often enough for Clara, the manager, to start asking uncomfortable questions, and for the other waiters to start speculating about Harper's rich admirer. On Thursday, he came in at lunchtime and ordered only a coffee, staying for 2 hours reading newspapers and watching Harper work. On Friday, he showed up at the end of her shift and offered her a ride home, which she refused but thanked him for. On Saturday, he simply appeared at the park where Harper was walking, pretending it was a coincidence. Are you following me? Harper asked, stopping next to the bench where Dylan was sitting with a book. Technically, I was here first, he replied, holding up the book. Restaurant Management for Beginners. Fascinating reading. Harper glanced at the book, then back at him. Why are you reading that? Academic curiosity. Dylan Hayes doesn't do anything out of academic curiosity. You've got some crazy plan in your head, don't you? Dylan closed the book and smiled in that dangerously familiar way. Actually, I have a proposal for you. If it's for me to be your private waitress, the answer is no. Better than that. Dylan stood, suddenly looking nervous. I want to invest in your restaurant. Harper blinked. What restaurant? What you're going to open? With me as the investor and you as the chef and partner. The world stopped for a moment. Harper was sure she had misheard. Are you out of your mind? Probably, Dylan laughed. But I'm serious, I have the capital, you have the talent. We can make this happen. Harper started walking, needing to move to process what she was hearing. Dylan, you barely know me. You've eaten my food once. Once. Pasta with tomato sauce is hardly fine dining. It's not about the food, he said, walking beside her. Well, it's not just about the food. It's about the way you talk about cooking. It's about the passion in your eyes when you mention your father. It's about how you turn something simple into something special. Harper stopped walking. This is pity. You feel sorry for the poor waitress with impossible dreams. Harper. No. She turned to face him. I don't accept charity, especially not disguised as a business opportunity. It's not charity. No? Then what is it? Because men like you don't invest in people like me out of the goodness of their hearts. Dylan's expression grew serious. Maybe men like me recognize opportunities when they see them, and maybe people like you deserve chances they've never had. Harper felt something stir in her chest, but she pushed the feeling away. The answer is no. Harper. No, Dylan. Thank you for the offer, but no. She walked quickly toward her apartment, leaving Dylan standing in the park with his proposal rejected and his confusion clear. At home, Harper found Lila in the kitchen, attacking a tub of ice cream as if it had personally offended her family. Rough day? Lila asked, offering her a spoon. Dylan Hayes just offered me money to open a restaurant, Harper said, dropping onto the couch. Lila nearly choked on her ice cream. He what? You heard me. And you said yes, of course? I said no. Lila set the ice cream down on the table and stared at Harper as if she had just confessed to being an alien. You said no to an investment in your dream from the richest man you know, who is clearly interested in you. That's exactly why I said no. I don't want romantic charity. Harper, you're an idiot. Thanks for the support, best friend. Lila stood and started rummaging through a drawer full of old papers. Where is? Ah, here. She pulled out a yellowed, crumpled flyer. Remember this? Harper looked at the paper in Lila's hand. It was an old flyer for her father's food truck. Jimmy's Kitchen on Wheels. Homemade food made with love. There was a faded picture of her father, smiling proudly beside the red trailer. Lila. Harper's voice came out weaker than she intended. Your father believed in his dreams. He started with nothing and built something beautiful. And you're throwing away the chance to carry on his legacy out of pride. It's not pride. It's fear, Lila said, sitting beside her. You're afraid to try and fail. You're afraid to accept help because that would mean you might need people, and heaven forbid Harper should need anyone. Harper held the flyer, running her fingers over the faded picture. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does? What if he's doing this for the wrong reasons? What if he's doing it for the right ones? Harper looked at Lila. When did you get so wise? Since my best friend started sabotaging the chance of a lifetime. The next morning, Harper was setting up tables when Dylan showed up. But this time he wasn't empty-handed. He carried a folder and had that determined look he probably wore in important business meetings. Can I talk to you? He asked. Dylan, I already said. 5 minutes, please. Clara nodded that it was fine, and Harper led him to a corner table. Dylan opened the folder and spread papers across the table. Floor plans, handwritten menu ideas, market research. What is all this? Your opportunity, Dylan said. I spent last night thinking about what you said yesterday, about charity and wrong motives. Harper looked at the papers. The floor plans showed a small but cozy space, with an open kitchen and intimate tables. The menu had simple but refined dishes, exactly the kind of food she dreamed of making. Dylan, this isn't a charity project, he continued. It's a smart investment in real talent. I put up the initial capital, you bring the culinary knowledge and passion. We split the profits 50-50. You did a full market study overnight? I have a very efficient team. Harper studied the papers more closely. Everything was detailed, thought out, real. Why are you doing this? Dylan hesitated. Because in 3 meetings with you, I have felt more alive than in the last 3 years running a company. Because you have something I lost a long time ago, passion for something that truly matters. And because. He paused, as if deciding whether to continue. Because I believe in you. Harper felt something shift inside her chest. There was no pity in his eyes. It was respect, admiration, faith. I still think you're crazy. Probably am. Do you accept anyway? Harper looked again at the papers, then at Dylan, then around the restaurant where she worked, serving other people's dreams. I need to think. How long? A day, maybe 2. Dylan began gathering the papers. You can keep these. Read them. Think about them. Change whatever you want. But Harper... He stopped and looked her directly in the eyes. Don't let fear make the decision for you. After he left, Harper kept staring at the papers. The floor plan showed exactly the kind of place she had always dreamed of. The menu included some of the recipes she had been refining over the years. He had really listened. Every conversation, every detail she had ever mentioned about her dreams. That night at home, Harper spread the papers out on the kitchen table and remembered what Lila had said about carrying on her father's legacy. She went to her bedroom and opened the dresser drawer where she kept important things. At the very back, wrapped in an old t-shirt, was her father's recipe notebook. Harper hadn't opened it in years. It had always been too painful. But now, with Dylan's proposal on the kitchen table and the old food truck flyer beside it, she felt it might finally be time. She opened the notebook slowly. On the first page was her father's familiar handwriting. For my Harper, who always knew that food made with love can change the world. She turned the pages, seeing the notes, the handwritten adjustments, the little sketches of dishes he had wanted to try. On the last used page, she found something she had never noticed before. The secret isn't in expensive ingredients or complicated techniques. The secret is cooking with an open heart and never being afraid to try something new. Dreams are ingredients too, my daughter. Use them generously. Harper closed the notebook and looked at Dylan's papers spread across the table. Maybe, she murmured to herself, touching the notebook's cover, I'm ready. 3 months later, Harper stood in front of what used to be an empty space in Lincoln Park. Now a red and gold sign read, Harper's Flame. Her hands trembled as she held the keys, and for a moment she wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Are you going to stand there until it gets dark? Dylan appeared beside her, carrying a box of the last kitchen utensils. I'm processing. Harper replied, 3 months ago, I was a waitress. Now I'm a restaurant owner? Partner, Dylan corrected, and chef, and the bravest person I know. Harper looked at him. Over the past months, Dylan had been there for every decision, every renovation, every panic attack. He understood business, she understood food, and together they had built something neither could have done alone. Ready for opening night? He asked. Ready is a strong word. How about terrified but determined? The inside of Harper's Flame perfectly reflected Harper's personality. Warm earth-toned walls with unpretentious art, plants hanging in handmade ceramic pots, and rustic wooden tables that looked like they had a history. The kitchen was open so customers could watch the magic happen. It wasn't traditionally elegant, but it was welcoming, authentic, real. The decor is perfect, Lila said, walking in with a bouquet of flowers. Very you. Chaotic but charming. Thanks, I think, Harper laughed nervously. The team Harper had put together was small but dedicated. Marcus, the chef from the ivory table, had agreed to be her sous chef. Jenny, an experienced waitress, was training 2 college students as assistants. It wasn't a 5-star brigade, but they had enthusiasm and loyalty. Everyone, Harper called out, getting the staff's attention. We all know tonight's going to be hectic. The kitchen's new, you're nervous, I'm terrified. But remember, we're not aiming for perfect. We're aiming for memorable. At 6 o'clock, Harper opened the doors to the first customers. She had invited a few friends, some old coworkers, and Dylan had brought a few business acquaintances. Nothing too formal, just a night to see how everything would run. The first signs of trouble appeared immediately. The sound system, which was supposed to play soft jazz, suddenly started blasting electronic music at an ear-splitting volume. Jenny rushed to turn it down and accidentally shut it off completely, leaving the restaurant in total silence. Welcome to Harper's Flame, Harper announced to the guests, trying to keep things light. Where the music is as unpredictable as the menu. The customers laughed, and the tension eased. In the kitchen, Marcus discovered the oven's temperature was all over the place. The first dishes came out either undercooked or burnt. Harper had to improvise, changing recipes on the spot and explaining to the guests that they were sampling beta versions of the dishes. Table 4 wants to know why the soup is cold, Jenny whispered to Harper. Tell them it's experimental gazpacho, Harper replied, quickly seasoning a pot of sauce. And smile like it's on purpose. Dylan moved from table to table, chatting with guests and making them feel like part of a culinary adventure rather than victims of a dining disaster. The most chaotic moment came when Tommy, one of the college students, tried to carry 4 plates at once and tripped over his own foot. The plates flew through the air in slow motion, creating a shower of mushroom risotto that splashed across 3 different tables. And that, Harper announced from the middle of the kitchen, was our demonstration of abstract culinary art. The table that got the worst of it happened to be 2 local food critics Dylan had invited. Harper was certain her reputation had died before it had even begun. But instead of complaining, they started laughing and asked to take photos of the art installation on the floor. Only at Harper's Flame, one of them said, do you get entertainment included in the price? By 9 o'clock, against all odds, the restaurant was running smoothly. The dishes were finally coming out on time. Jenny had tamed the sound system, and the guests were clearly enjoying themselves. There was something about the chaotic yet welcoming atmosphere that made people relax and connect. Harper was in the kitchen, finally breathing normally for the first time in hours, when Dylan appeared. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I've survived a culinary tornado," Harper laughed, wiping her hands on her apron. "But a good tornado, you know?" "Have you seen the guests?" Dylan gestured toward the dining room. "They're loving it. Not for the perfection, but for the authenticity." Harper looked through the pass. The tables were full of people laughing, talking, enjoying not just the food, but the whole experience. It was exactly as she had dreamed. "We did it," she murmured, still not quite believing it. "You did it," Dylan corrected. "This is all you." He was closer now, and Harper could see the genuine pride in his eyes. Not the pride of an investor seeing a good return, but of someone watching a person they love make their dream come true. "Dylan," she began. "Harper, I have to tell you something," he interrupted. "These last few months working with you, watching you create this, it's not just about the restaurant anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean I've fallen in love. With you, with your passion, your courage, the way you turn chaos into magic." Harper felt her heart race. The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade in the background. "Dylan, I know we started as business partners. I know mixing work with other things might be complicated. But I can't pretend anymore that it's only professional." Harper looked at him. For months she had tried to ignore the feelings growing between them, focusing only on the restaurant. But now, in the middle of the success they had built together, it was impossible to deny. "So have I," she whispered. "I've fallen in love too." Dylan smiled, that genuine smile she had learned to recognize and love. He leaned in to kiss her, and for a moment, the world stopped. "God!" Tommy shouted. Splash! A wave of tomato sauce hit Harper and Dylan head-on. Tommy had slipped again, this time carrying an entire pot of sauce that now decorated the kitchen wall, the floor, and most of all, the 2 restaurant owners. Sorry, Tommy stammered, bright red with embarrassment. Harper looked at Dylan, both of them dripping with sauce from hair to shoes. For a moment, she thought they might cry. Then Dylan started laughing, and Harper joined in. Within seconds, they were laughing like teenagers, standing in the middle of their kitchen, completely covered in sauce. "Well," Harper said, wiping sauce off her face, "at least now we know the sauce recipe is good." "Excellent, actually," Dylan agreed, licking a bit off his finger. What they didn't know was that a customer had filmed the whole scene through the kitchen pass. The video of the 2 restaurant owners kissing and then immediately getting hit by a tsunami of tomato sauce would be posted on Instagram 20 minutes later with the caption, "Romance plus food disaster equals pure gold. Harper's Flame, best date night ever." By the end of the night, the video had 15,000 views. The next day, Harper was cleaning the kitchen when Dylan's phone rang. Even from a distance, she could hear the furious voice on the other end. "Dylan Hayes!" the voice boomed. "You kissed a waitress? In public? It's on the internet. My friends from the golf club are sending me videos." Dylan held the phone away from his ear, glancing at Harper with an expression somewhere between amused and resigned. "Hi, Mom," he said. "How are you?" "How am I?" The voice rose even higher. "I'm mortified. A Hayes does not behave like this, and in such a common place, with tomato sauce. Harper grimaced and whispered, "Your parents saw the video?" Dylan nodded and kept trying to calm his mother. "Mom, Harper isn't just a waitress. She's my partner, an incredible chef." "I don't want to know what she is," his mother shouted. "I want to know when you're going to come to your senses." Dylan hung up and looked at Harper. "Well," he said, "I think you're going to meet my parents soon." "This will be fun," Harper muttered, scrubbing the counter with unnecessary force. "Hey," Dylan touched her arm. "It doesn't matter what they think. What matters is this, us, what we've built." Harper smiled, but a small knot of worry formed in her chest. She had forgotten that Dylan wasn't just a wealthy investor. He was Dylan Hayes, from a family with expectations and a reputation to protect. And now she was right in the middle of it. A week after the viral opening of Harper's Flame, Dylan was sitting in the 30th floor office of Hayes Corporation, facing his parents like judges in a courtroom. The view of Chicago stretched out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but the atmosphere in the room was colder than the wind off Lake Michigan. Margaret Hayes, elegant and imposing in her Chanel suit, held a tablet showing the video that had become a social media sensation. Robert Hayes, family patriarch and company founder, stood behind the mahogany desk, wearing the most serious expression Dylan had seen in years. 50,000 views, Margaret said, as if announcing a national tragedy. 50,000 people saw Hayes behaving like a normal person? Dylan suggested. Like a fool. Robert slammed his hand on the desk. Kissing an employee covered in tomato sauce in a popular establishment. Dylan took a deep breath. He had expected this conversation, but that didn't make it any less frustrating. Harper isn't an employee. She's my partner and a talented chef who... She was a waitress 6 months ago. Margaret cut in. Dylan, dear, I know men your age go through phases, but this has gone far enough. Phases? Dylan repeated, incredulous. Late rebellion, Robert explained, as if diagnosing an illness. It's understandable. You took on responsibilities early. Maybe you need to blow off steam, but now it's time to come back to reality. The reality is that I'm an adult, and I can date whoever I want. Not when it affects the family's reputation, Margaret said coldly. Not when it puts at risk everything we've built. Robert stood and walked to the window. Dylan, you have a responsibility. To the company, to the Hayes name, to the future generations of this family. You can't throw all that away for a romantic fantasy. It's not a fantasy. I love Harper. The silence that followed was deafening. Then you leave us no choice but to take drastic action, Robert finally said, turning to face his son. If you continue with this relationship, you will be removed as president of Hayes Corporation. Your inheritance will be cut off. You will be disowned. Dylan felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. You wouldn't do that. We will, Margaret confirmed. And we've already started preparing the papers. You have 1 week to end this and come to your senses. And if I refuse, then you'll find out what it's like to live in the real world you seem to admire so much, Robert said. Without the Hayes name, without Hayes resources, without Hayes protection. Dylan searched his parents' faces for any sign of hesitation, any crack in their resolve. He found none. I need to think. You have 1 week, Margaret repeated. Use it wisely. In the days that followed, Harper noticed a change in Dylan. He still came to the restaurant, but he seemed distant and distracted. Their conversations were short and professional. The warm looks were gone, replaced by a cold politeness that left her confused and hurt. He's acting strange, Harper told Lila as they closed the restaurant on Thursday. Since Monday, it's like he's a different person. Maybe he's having problems at the company, Lila suggested as she counted the cash register. Or maybe he's having second thoughts, Harper murmured. About the restaurant, about me, about everything. Harper, you're being paranoid. Am I? He barely looks me in the eye anymore. And yesterday, when I tried to talk about expanding the menu, he just said, "Ask Marcus," and walked away. Lila stopped counting and looked at her friend. Do you want me to talk to him? No, Harper sighed. If he wants distance, I'll give him distance. On Friday, Harper's Flame was as busy as ever when a well-dressed, middle-aged man asked for a table for one. Nothing unusual. He ordered grilled salmon and a glass of white wine, ate quietly, and paid without any issues. 20 minutes after leaving, he came back shouting, I'm going to sue this place, he yelled, drawing everyone's attention. The food was spoiled. I'm feeling sick. Harper rushed from the counter to where he stood. Sir, what's the problem? We can sort this out. The problem is you almost killed me, he went on, dramatically. Food poisoning. I'm calling the health department. Sir, please, let's talk calmly. There's nothing to talk about. My lawyer will contact you. He stormed out, leaving Harper stunned and customers whispering nervously. Within 15 minutes, 2 other tables asked for their checks and canceled their orders. What was that? Marcus asked, stepping out of the kitchen. I don't know, Harper said, checking the salmon batch. The fish was perfect. I inspected everything this morning. On Saturday, Harper got a call from a lawyer saying the restaurant was being sued for negligence and food poisoning. The amount, $500,000. Dylan arrived at the restaurant an hour after she called him, looking more serious than ever. Tell me everything, he said, sitting in the small back office. Harper described the incident, showing all the purchase receipts, quality certificates, and the strict safety protocols they followed. This doesn't make sense, Dylan murmured, going over the papers. All the suppliers are certified, you follow every procedure. Dylan, what if it's true? Harper asked, her voice shaking. What if I really missed something? What if… Harper, look at me, Dylan took her hands. You're meticulous with food. There's no way this was negligence. For a moment, Harper saw the old Dylan again, caring, protective, present. But then he pulled back, as if remembering something. I'll hire a lawyer, he said formally. We'll take care of this. Dylan, what's going on? You've been different since Monday. If something's wrong, tell me. Nothing's wrong. I'm just dealing with some company matters. What kind of matters? Dylan hesitated, clearly struggling with himself. Family matters. About us. His silence was all the answer she needed. I see, Harper said, standing up. Well, thank you for hiring the lawyer. Send the bill to the restaurant. Harper. No, Dylan, it's fine. I understand perfectly. That night, Dylan was in his apartment, staring out at the city lights, when his phone rang. It was the private investigator he had hired to check the validity of the lawsuit. Mr. Hayes, the voice said, I have information about the man who sued the restaurant. What did you find out? He's not a regular customer. He's a private investigator, and the person who hired him will surprise you. Dylan felt the blood drain from his face. Who? Your family, sir. Robert and Margaret Hayes hired him to create a scandal that would force the restaurant to close. Dylan dropped the phone to the floor. His own parents had sabotaged Harper, attacked her dream to make him walk away. He looked at the clock. It was almost midnight, but it didn't matter. He grabbed his car keys and ran out. He had to tell Harper the truth. He had to fix this. But when he got to her apartment, the lights were off, and she didn't answer her phone. His parents' ultimatum was working exactly as they planned, and Dylan realized it might already be too late to choose between his family and his heart. Harper was sitting on the kitchen floor of the restaurant at 5 o'clock on Monday morning, surrounded by piles of invoices, negative newspaper clippings, and a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The lawsuit had made local news, and reservations were being canceled one after another. Did you sleep here? Lila asked, walking in through the back door. Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now, Harper murmured, showing her the cancellation list. 43 reservations canceled since Friday. If this keeps up, we'll be closed in 2 weeks. Lila sat down next to her on the floor. What are you going to do? Harper looked around the kitchen that had become her life, her dream, her identity. I'm going to fight, she said, with a determination that even surprised herself. If they're going to take me down, it will be while I'm fighting. By hosting a free tasting night, I'm going to prove that our food isn't just safe, it's the best in Chicago. Lila stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. Harper, you're going to give free food to people who might sue you too? I'm going to give free food to people who can spread the truth, Harper said, standing up as energy returned to her body. Marcus, she called to the sous chef who had just arrived, I need you to help me put together the most impressive menu of our lives. Over the next 3 days, Harper worked like a woman possessed. She refined recipes, tested new dishes, and created a tasting menu that told the story of her culinary journey. Each dish was a love letter to honest food, made with quality ingredients and skilled technique. Dylan appeared occasionally, always distant, always formal. He offered to help finance the event, but Harper refused. "I can do this on my own," she said without looking at him. "Harper, let me help." "Why?" She finally turned to face him. "So you can feel better about walking away when things got hard?" Dylan looked as if he was about to say something, but simply nodded and left. What Harper didn't know was that Dylan was working behind the scenes. He had quietly reached out to food journalists, bloggers, and local influencers, all curious about the controversy. He had also made sure the event's safety would be impeccable and that every ingredient was documented and certified. On Thursday night, Harper opened the restaurant doors for a night of truth, as she had named the event. More than 100 people showed up, including many familiar faces of loyal customers, but also strangers drawn by curiosity. "Good evening, everyone," Harper said, standing in the center of the restaurant, her heart pounding. "I know many of you came here because of the controversy. Others came because you believe in us. Whatever the reason, tonight you will taste food made with love, transparency, and truth." The first course was bruschetta with organic tomatoes and basil grown in the restaurant's garden. Harper showed the certificates for each ingredient, explained the preparation process, and invited anyone to visit the kitchen. Sarah Chen, a food critic from the Chicago Tribune, was there. Harper saw her writing down every detail, tasting each dish with scientific precision. "This is our wild mushroom risotto recipe," Harper announced, serving the second course. "The mushrooms come from an organic farm 40 kilometers from here. The owner, Mr. Williams, is here tonight and can tell you about the growing process." A gray-bearded man gave a shy wave from the back of the restaurant. Harper's strategy was brilliant, not just serving food, but telling the story behind each ingredient, putting a human face on every aspect of the restaurant. Midway through the evening, Marcus approached Harper with a concerned expression. "There's a health inspector here," he whispered. "He wants to check the kitchen." Harper smiled. "Perfect. Tell him to go right ahead. Cameras, tests, whatever he wants." The surprise inspection turned into another moment of transparency. Harper invited everyone present to follow along, turning what could have been an embarrassment into a show of confidence. "Perfect temperature," the inspector announced, checking the refrigerator. "Outstanding hygiene protocols." The crowd applauded. Around 10 o'clock, Harper noticed a group of men in suits talking quietly in the corner. They didn't seem interested in the food and were speaking urgently on their phones. "Who are those guys?" she asked Jenny. "I don't know. They came in about half an hour ago and haven't moved from there." The event was a resounding success. People not only ate, but bought vouchers for future visits, took photos, and posted on social media with positive hashtags. At the end of the evening, Sarah Chen approached Harper. "Miss Collins," she said, "this was one of the most impressive displays of culinary integrity I've ever seen. Expect my review in Sunday's edition." When the last customer left, Harper finally let her shoulders relax. She had done everything she could. Now all that was left was to wait. That's when she saw the envelope on the floor near the door. Expensive paper, official seal. "What's that?" Lila asked, watching Harper pick it up. Harper opened it with trembling fingers. It was a court summons. A new lawsuit, this time for damaging business reputation and deceptive business practices. The amount, $2 million. "How is this possible?" Harper whispered. "We just proved our innocence to 100 people." "Who gave this to you?" Lila asked. "It must have been one of those men in suits," Harper said, sinking into a chair. "They were here all night, just waiting for the right moment." Harper's hands shook as she read the document. This time it wasn't just about food poisoning. It was about misleading investors, questionable business practices, and a list of accusations that sounded like someone was trying to destroy not only the restaurant, but her reputation entirely. "Harper," Lila said softly, "this isn't about food anymore. Someone wants to ruin you." A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was close to midnight. Harper opened it cautiously and found Dylan standing outside, 2 suitcases at his feet, his expression a mix of determination and desperation. "Dylan? What?" "I was fired," he said simply. "Well, technically I was removed as CEO and cut off from my inheritance. But the important part is, do I still have you?" Harper looked at him, at the suitcases, at the man who had been distant all week and was now standing on her doorstep vulnerable. "I don't understand." "My parents," Dylan said, stepping inside uninvited, words pouring out. "They hired that man to create the scandal. They're behind the lawsuits. I found out today and confronted them. I told them I chose you, the restaurant, our life together." "Dylan?" "They said if I didn't break up with you by tomorrow, I'd lose everything. So I lost everything," he said with a sad smile. "But I gained the chance to fight by your side, if you'll let me." Harper held the summons in her shaking hands. "Dylan, you don't understand. They won't stop. I just got another summons, $2 million this time." Dylan took the paper and read it quickly. "Then we'll fight them, together. You lost everything because of me." "No," Dylan said, touching her face gently. "I chose everything that really matters." Harper looked into his eyes and saw the truth. No calculation, no hesitation, only love and determination. "Well," she said at last, "I hope you can cook, because now we're two unemployed people with a restaurant to save." Dylan smiled, the first genuine smile in a week. "I think I can learn." 3 months after Dylan showed up at her door with his suitcases, Harper's Flame had not only survived the scandal but had thrived in surprising ways. Sarah Chen's glowing review in the Chicago Tribune, combined with the positive coverage from the tasting event, had turned the restaurant into a symbol of resilience and authenticity. Dylan, now officially a former CEO and ex-heir, had adjusted to life as a full partner in the restaurant with ease that surprised even him. His mornings began at 5 a.m., helping Marcus prep ingredients, and ended after midnight, closing the register and planning the next day's menu. "Are you happy?" Harper asked one Friday morning, watching Dylan chop onions with the focus of a surgeon. "Happy?" He paused, thinking about the question. "I'm exhausted, my feet hurt, my hands are full of cuts from handling knives, and I make in a month what I used to make in a day at Hayes Corporation." Harper felt a knot in her stomach. "Dylan? And I've never felt so fulfilled in my life." He finished, smiling. "This is the first time I've worked with my hands, created something real, gone to bed knowing I've made a difference in people's lives." The success of the original Harper's Flame had caught the attention of independent investors, small business owners who believed in Harper's vision of honest, accessible food. A group led by Elena Rodriguez, owner of a family-run coffee shop chain, had offered to finance a second location. West Loop would be perfect, Elena said during a meeting at the corner table. "Young crowd, professionals who want good food without the pretension. You're exactly what that neighborhood needs." Harper looked at the numbers on the laptop. The investment was substantial but fair. The investors wanted 30% of the profits from the new location, leaving 70% for her and Dylan. "It's a great opportunity," Dylan whispered to her. "We can replicate the concept, keep the quality, and expand the impact." "But what if it doesn't work?" Harper replied softly. "What if we're biting off more than we can chew? Then we face it together, like always." The second Harper's Flame location opened 6 weeks later in a renovated space in the West Loop. The decor kept the rustic charm of the original, but added urban touches that connected with the local crowd. The menu was an expanded version of the original idea, elevated comfort food made with local ingredients and fair prices. The grand opening was a complete success. Lines formed on the sidewalk, local influencers posted excited stories, and the Chicago Reader published an article calling Harper's Flame Chicago's Democratic Food Revolution. "We did it," Dylan said, hugging Harper at the end of opening night. 2 restaurants running, a happy team, satisfied customers. "We did it," Harper repeated, but her voice carried a sadness Dylan noticed right away. In the weeks that followed, as both restaurants settled into their routines, Harper grew quieter. Dylan often found her standing by the window, lost in thought, or checking the financial numbers over and over, even when everything was going well. "What's going on?" he asked one night, after they closed the original location. "Nothing," Harper said, needlessly arranging utensils that were already clean. "Harper, talk to me. You've been acting strange for weeks." She stopped arranging things and turned to face him. "Have you ever thought about what you lost because of me?" "What?" "Your company, your inheritance, your family, everything you worked your whole life to build, gone because of a stubborn waitress with dreams too big." Dylan stared at her, trying to understand where this was coming from. Harper, none of that was because of you. It was my choice. It was a foolish choice, she said, her voice cracking slightly. You were the CEO of one of the biggest companies in Chicago. Now you're peeling potatoes in a restaurant. And I love peeling potatoes in this restaurant. You love it today, but what about tomorrow? Or in 5 years? When the excitement fades and you realize you traded an empire for this. Dylan stepped toward her, but Harper backed away. You're going to get tired of this, Dylan. You'll miss the life you had, and you'll blame me for losing it all. That's ridiculous. It's realistic, Harper said, crossing her arms. We're from different worlds. I've always known that. I tried to ignore it, but what? But I think we should end things before you hate me for ruining your life. The silence that followed was heavy with pain. Dylan looked at Harper as if she had just told him the earth was flat. You're breaking up with me because you think I'm going to get tired of you? I'm breaking up with you because I know it will happen. Better now, while we still care about each other. Dylan shook his head and laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but the laugh of someone who had just heard something absurd. Harper Collins, he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. You are the most stubborn, impossible, infuriating person I have ever met. Harper's eyes widened at the sight of the box. Dylan, what? And that is exactly why I want to spend the rest of my life trying to convince you that you are worthy of love. He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. Will you marry me? Dylan, you're not understanding. No titles, he went on, kneeling right there in the restaurant kitchen. No inheritance, no big family name or 8-figure bank account, and that just you and me in life's kitchen, cooking together, arguing over spices, occasionally burning a dish. You're crazy, Harper whispered, tears starting to form. Completely, Dylan agreed. Crazy about you. Crazy about this life we've built. Crazy about waking up every day knowing I get to work alongside the woman I love, doing something that matters. But your family, your future. My family is you. My future is here, with you, building something beautiful together. Harper? Don't you see? I didn't lose anything. I gained everything. Harper looked at him, kneeling among pots and utensils, holding a ring, in the very kitchen where they had shared so many moments. Dylan, are you going to make me kneel here until my knees give out? He asked with a smile. Because I'm willing to, but I'd rather have an answer before I need knee surgery. Harper laughed through her tears. Are you sure? Absolutely sure you won't regret this? Harper, for the past 6 months, I've woken up every day excited to work. I laugh more, sleep better, and for the first time in my life I feel like I'm truly myself. How could I ever regret a life like that? And if your parents try to split us up again? So we face it together, like we always do. Harper looked at the ring, at Dylan, and at the kitchen around them that had become the center of their world. This is crazy, she murmured. The best kind of crazy in my life, Dylan confirmed. So, will you marry me, or do I have to settle for being your eternally lovesick business partner? Harper knelt down too, so she was at his level on the kitchen floor. Yes, she said, smiling through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you, but only if you promise that if you ever regret it, you'll tell me. You won't just suffer in silence. I promise. Dylan slid the ring onto her finger. But you have to promise you won't try to break up with me for my own good anymore. I promise to try, Harper laughed. That's the best I can hope for from you. Dylan kissed her right there on the kitchen floor, between splashes of tomato sauce and dustings of flour. The event had been planned as a celebration. Elena Rodriguez had organized a special dinner at the original Harper's Flame to introduce Harper and Dylan to other potential investors interested in expanding the brand. The main table was decorated with flowers from the local market, understated candles, and the finest glassware borrowed from a friendly restaurant. Are you nervous? Dylan asked, straightening his tie. They had decided to dress a little more formally for the occasion. Terrified, Harper admitted, smoothing the simple black dress she had bought especially for the night. I'm used to serving investors, not dining with them as an equal. You're not just an equal, you're above them, Dylan said, kissing her forehead. You built all of this with talent and determination. They should feel honored to invest in you. Guests began arriving at 7 o'clock. Elena brought 3 couples of investors, all owners of small family businesses in Chicago. There was also James Morrison, a businessman who owned a chain of delicatessens, and Sandra Kim, owner of a corporate catering company. Harper had prepared a special tasting menu, 5 courses that told the story of the restaurant's culinary evolution. Each dish was accompanied by a brief presentation about the philosophy behind the recipe. "Our first course," Harper announced, serving bruschetta with organic tomatoes, represents our humble roots, local ingredients, honest preparation, authentic flavor. The guests sampled the food and murmured their approval. Conversations flowed naturally between business and cuisine, creating exactly the atmosphere Harper had hoped for. Dylan moved among the tables, sharing his own story of leaving the Hayes Corporation for the kitchen. His honesty about the life change earned respect and curiosity from the investors. "So you really traded the corner office for a kitchen?" James asked, clearly impressed. "I traded an office where I counted money for a kitchen where I create memories," Dylan replied. "Best decision of my life." By 8:30, Harper was feeling confident. The conversations about expansion were promising, the dishes were being praised, and the investors seemed genuinely interested in being part of Harper's Flames vision. That's when the restaurant doors swung open with unnecessary force. Margaret and Robert Hayes walked in as if they owned the place, followed by a man in a gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. Silence fell instantly across the room. "Good evening," Robert said, his voice carrying through the now quiet restaurant. "We're sorry to interrupt the festivities." Dylan rose slowly from the table, his face pale. "Mother? Father, what are you doing here?" "Saving you from making the biggest mistake of your life," Margaret replied, glancing around with obvious disdain. "And protecting these honest people from being misled." Elena stood, confused. "Excuse me, but who are you?" "We're Dylan Hayes' parents," Robert said formally. "And this is our attorney, Mr. Thompson. We came because we learned our future daughter-in-law is expanding her business with money from unsuspecting investors." "Robert, no," Dylan said, stepping forward. "Dylan, sit down," Margaret ordered. "It's time these people knew the truth about who they're dealing with." The attorney opened the briefcase and pulled out several documents. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, taking charge of the moment, "we regret to inform you that Miss Collins has systematically manipulated Dylan Hayes in order to gain access to the Hayes family's financial resources." "That's a lie," Harper said, finding her voice. "It's the truth," Margaret pressed on. "This woman disguised herself as a waitress to seduce our son, convinced him to invest in a questionable business, and then cut him off from his family when we tried to intervene." The investors exchanged uneasy glances. Sandra Kim frowned. "Miss Collins, is this true?" "Of course not," Harper exclaimed. "I was a waitress when we met, but I never—" She admits it." Robert cut in. "She admits she pretended just to meet him." "I didn't pretend anything." Harper was growing desperate. "I worked at the restaurant where he showed up. We have proof," the lawyer said, spreading photographs across the table. Documents showing Miss Collins looked into Dylan's financial situation even before the first date. Harper stared at the photos and forged documents. They looked convincing, showing her supposedly meeting with investigators, getting information about the Hayes fortune. "This is fake," she cried. "Harper," James Morrison said gently, "maybe it's better to clear this up in private." "There's nothing to clear up." Dylan finally burst out. "Get out. Now." "Dylan, dear," Margaret used the same condescending tone she'd always used when he was a boy. "We know it's hard to admit you were deceived, but these people deserve to know what kind of person is asking for their money." Elena looked at Harper with an expression of disappointment that broke the young chef's heart. "Harper, I need you to be honest with me. Was there some plan when you met Dylan?" "Elena, I swear on my father's memory there was no plan at all," Harper said, tears forming in her eyes. "Dylan just walked into the restaurant where I worked. I didn't even know who he was." "But you knew he was rich," Robert said. "The photos prove it. I found out when he handed me his business card." Harper was desperate now. The murmurs among the investors grew louder. Harper could see doubt settling on faces that moments earlier had shown excitement and respect. "Maybe we should postpone this conversation," Sandra said, already reaching for her purse. "No," Harper exclaimed. "Please, Don't believe this. Everything we've built here is real. The love Dylan and I have is real. Love? Margaret laughed cruelly. My dear, you may fool our son, but you can't fool us. We know exactly what kind of woman you are. At that moment, the restaurant door burst open. Lila stormed in, hair disheveled, clearly furious. Sorry I'm late, she said out of breath. I had to stop by my place to grab a few things. Leela, not now. Harper whispered. Now is the perfect time. Leela shot back, striding straight to the main table. Especially since I heard the whole conversation from the sidewalk. She looked directly at Robert and Margaret Hayes. So you're the parents who hired a spy to sabotage my best friend's restaurant? What is this person talking about? Margaret asked with disdain. Lila pulled a flash drive from her pocket and slammed it onto the table. Talking about fake evidence? She said, her voice full of anger. How about real evidence? Here are videos of the private investigator you hired. I filmed him sabotaging the kitchen, planting evidence, creating the false food poisoning case. The room went completely silent. I also have recordings of phone calls where you told him exactly how to create the scandal, Leila continued. Want me to play them right here, in front of everyone? The lawyer tried to grab the flash drive, but Leila was quicker. Oh no, she said, putting it back in her pocket. This is going straight to the FBI. Conspiracy to destroy a business, falsifying evidence, blackmail. You're in serious trouble. Robert Hayes had gone visibly pale. We don't know what you're talking about. You don't? Lila smiled dangerously. Then you won't mind if I hand all this over to the authorities tomorrow morning. She turned to the investors who were watching with their mouths open. The truth is simple. Harper and Dylan met by chance, truly fell in love, and built an honest business through hard work. The only lies here are the accusations from this family of vipers who can't stand the fact that their son chose love over money. Margaret opened her mouth to protest, but Lila cut her off. And if any of you ever try to sue or harm my friend again, this flash drive will end up in the hands of every journalist in Chicago. Imagine the headlines: Hayes family sabotages small business to control son. The lawyer whispered something urgently to Robert, who nodded gravely. Let's go, Robert said at last. But this isn't over. Oh, it's over, Lila replied, and you lost. The silence in the restaurant after the Hayes left was almost deafening. Harper stayed in Dylan's arms, still processing everything that had happened, while the investors looked at each other, clearly trying to grasp the magnitude of the drama they had just witnessed. Elena was the first to break the silence. Harper, she said, her voice soft but firm, I need you to know that after what we just saw, I'm even more certain that you and Dylan are exactly the kind of people we want to do business with. James Morrison nodded in agreement. Integrity under pressure. That's what we look for in business partners. Sandra Kim stepped closer to Harper. I'm sorry you had to go through this, but it's clear who the honest people are in this room. One by one, the investors expressed not only their continued support, but admiration for the way Harper and Dylan had handled the situation. What should have been a night of humiliation had turned into an unplanned display of character. After the guests left, promising future talks about expansion, Harper turned to Lila, who was slipping the flash drive into her pocket. Lila, she said, her voice tired, I don't want you to use that. What? Lila looked at her as if Harper had just spoken an alien language. Harper, are you out of your mind? That flash drive is proof they tried to destroy you. I know, but I don't want to destroy them in return. Dylan stepped closer, frowning. Harper, they tried to ruin your life, our business, our future. And they failed, Harper said simply. Look around. The restaurant is thriving. We have investors who believe in us. We proved our innocence without humiliating anyone in public. Lila shook her head in frustration. But they might try again. They might, but if they do, then we'll use the evidence. For now, I'd rather keep it as insurance. Dylan studied Harper's face. Are you sure? I am, Harper sighed. They're your parents, Dylan. No matter what they've done, I don't want you to have to live with the guilt of publicly destroying their reputation. Lila rolled her eyes but kept the flash drive. Fine, but if they try anything again, I'm not asking for permission. Fair enough, Harper agreed. In the weeks that followed, a strange peace settled in. The Hayes made no further attempts at sabotage, apparently realizing they had lost the battle. The restaurants kept thriving, and the expansion plans moved forward steadily. But Harper felt restless. "You're acting strange," Dylan remarked one morning, finding her standing at the kitchen window, staring out at the street. "I'm fine." "Harper, you've known me for almost a year. I know when you're not fine." She turned to face him, and Dylan saw something in her eyes he couldn't immediately place. "I need some time," she finally said. "Time for what?" "For all of this. The restaurant, the plans, us." Dylan felt like he'd just been punched in the stomach. "What do you mean?" "I need to think, Dylan, about who I am without all this chaos, about what I really want. But we just got engaged." "I know." Harper touched the ring on her finger. "And maybe that's exactly why I need to be sure. I need to know if I'm choosing you or if I'm just holding on to what feels familiar after so much turmoil." Dylan looked at her for a long moment. "How long?" "I don't know. A few weeks, maybe a month." "And the restaurant?" "You can run it without me for a while. Marcus can take over the main kitchen, and you can handle the administrative side. It'll be good for you to prove to yourself that you can do this on your own." "Harper? Please." Her voice was almost a whisper. "I need this." Dylan wanted to argue, to convince her they were fine, that they had overcome everything together. But something in her expression stopped him. "All right," he finally said, "but that doesn't mean I'll stop loving you." "I know." Harper kissed his cheek. "And that's exactly why I need to be sure I deserve that love." Harper spent the next 2 weeks at her cousin's apartment in Milwaukee, far from Chicago, the restaurants, and Dylan. She cooked only for herself, walked through the city's parks, and tried to remember who she was before all this began. But no matter what she did, her thoughts always came back to Dylan. To the way he had learned to season sauces, to how he smiled when a customer praised a dish, to how he held her through the night when she had nightmares about going bankrupt. Lila visited at the end of the second week. "How are you?" she asked, sitting in the small kitchen of Harper's cousin. "Confused," Harper admitted. "I thought being away would give me clarity, but all I feel is empty." "And Dylan? Do you talk to him?" "Every day. He's keeping the restaurants running, but he's clearly struggling. Marcus said he works until he's exhausted so he doesn't have time to think." Harper felt a pang of guilt. "Maybe I'm being selfish." "Maybe you're just being human," Lila said. "You've been through a lot of trauma these past few months. It's normal to need time to process." "But what if I lose him?" "Harper, that man walked away from a fortune and his family's company for you. He's not going to give up on you two after just a few weeks apart." 3 days later, Harper was walking through downtown Milwaukee when she passed a small cafe. Through the window, she saw a couple sharing a slice of apple pie, laughing at something one of them had said. They looked completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to the world around them. Suddenly, Harper felt such a sharp, physical ache of longing that she had to steady herself against the wall. It wasn't just for Dylan, it was for everything they had built together. For the mornings in the kitchen, prepping the mise en place. For the evenings, telling stories to regular customers. For the feeling of building something important and beautiful with the person she loved. She pulled out her phone and called Harper's Flame. "Harper's Flame, good morning," Jenny's voice answered. "Jenny, it's me. How's everything?" "Harper." Jenny sounded genuinely happy. "Missing us? Because we are missing you like crazy." "How's Dylan? Working too much, smiling too little, but keeping it all going. Actually, hold on a second." Harper heard voices in the background. And then Marcus came on the line. "Chef, you need to come back." "Why? Is there a problem?" "Not exactly problems, but last night we had a table ask specifically for Harper's risotto. Dylan tried to explain you were on vacation, but the woman said the risotto didn't have the same soul without you making it." Harper felt her chest tighten. "Marcus, look, Dylan's trying really hard. He's learned fast, works hard, but something's missing when you're not here. The restaurant works, but it doesn't have the same life." "And Dylan, how is he really?" Marcus was silent for a moment. "He's surviving, chef, but he's not living." After hanging up, Harper stood on the sidewalk, watching the bustle of the city around her. She had left to find clarity about who she was without Dylan and the restaurants. The answer was simple. She was someone incomplete. That night, she called her cousin. "Can I borrow your car tomorrow?" she asked. "I need to go home." Of course. Did you find what you were looking for? Harper looked out the window toward the south, where Chicago waited for her. I found out I was looking in the wrong place, she said. What I was looking for was never here. It's always been where I left my heart. Harper drove the 4 hours from Milwaukee to Chicago, her heart beating faster the closer she got to the city. She had called Lila and asked her not to tell Dylan she was coming. She wanted it to be a surprise. It was almost 8 in the evening when she parked in front of the Ivory Table, the restaurant where it had all begun. It wasn't by chance she had chosen that place for the reunion. It was there Dylan had first appeared as a mysterious customer. There she had discovered who he really was, and there their lives had become irreversibly intertwined. The restaurant lights were off, but Harper could see a familiar figure moving in the kitchen through the back windows. Dylan was there, exactly where she had hoped he'd be. She used the key Clara had given her years ago for emergencies and slipped quietly in through the staff entrance. The restaurant was empty, chairs stacked on tables, but from the kitchen came the familiar sound of someone at work. Harper found Dylan with his back to the door, chopping onions with the precision of someone who had spent the past few months perfecting the skill. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly tousled, completely focused on the task. "Your knife skills have improved," she said softly. Dylan froze mid-motion, the knife suspended in the air. Slowly he turned. "Harper," his voice came out in an incredulous whisper. You're here." "I am." She stepped into the kitchen. "Clara told me you use this kitchen to test new recipes. It's quieter at night. I can think better." They looked at each other for a moment, the physical distance small, the emotional one still uncertain. "What are you making?" Harper asked, nodding toward the ingredients spread across the counter. "Trying to recreate that tomato sauce you used to make," Dylan admitted. "I can't get the seasoning right." Harper smiled slightly. "Can I help?" Dylan nodded, stepping aside to give her room. Harper washed her hands and moved next to him, the familiarity of her motions returning instantly. "The secret," she said, adding a pinch of fresh oregano, "is timing. You have to feel when the garlic is just right, neither too browned nor still raw." They worked side by side in silence for a few minutes, like dancers who knew every step by heart. Dylan chopped tomatoes while Harper sautéed the base, their movements in sync despite the weeks apart. "I missed you," Dylan said suddenly, without looking at her. "I missed you too," Harper admitted. "More than I thought I could." "Why did you leave, Harper? Really?" Harper paused, stirring the sauce as she chose her words. "Because I was afraid that everything between us had happened out of chaos, not out of a real choice. I wanted to be sure I'd choose you even in calm times. And are you sure now?" "I am." She turned to face him. "I spent 3 weeks trying to imagine a life without you, without this, without what we built together. And I realized I don't want that life." Dylan stopped chopping. "What do you want?" "I want to wake up next to you every day. I want to argue with you over whether the sauce needs more salt. I want to build a culinary empire based on love and honest food. I want to grow old with you, complaining that customers don't know how to appreciate good cooking." Dylan smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen since she returned. "And what about making sure you love me for the right reasons?" "Dylan," Harper stepped closer to him, "you gave up a fortune for me. You learned to cook, to run a restaurant, to deal with difficult suppliers. You chose a harder life because I was in it. If that's not loving for the right reasons, I don't know what is." They were close now, the aroma of tomato sauce wrapping around them like a memory of all their best moments. "Did you come back for the restaurant? Or for me?" Dylan asked quietly. "I came back because I realized there's no difference." Harper touched his face gently. "You are the restaurant. The restaurant is you. You're what we built together, what we are together." Dylan pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "Don't ever leave me like that again." "Never," Harper promised, "unless you burn my tomato sauce. Then I might have to reconsider." Dylan laughed and kissed her right there, in the middle of the kitchen where their lives had first intertwined, with the scent of garlic and fresh tomatoes witnessing their new beginning. "Come on," he said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." "Home," Harper repeated, and for the first time in weeks, the word felt whole. 6 months later, Harper's Flame had become more than a restaurant. It was a symbol. a symbol that dreams can come true, that true love exists, and that sometimes the best recipes in life come from the most unexpected ingredients. The grand reopening night after the renovation had been planned for weeks. Harper had decided it would be more than a party, it would be a celebration of everything they had overcome and built together. "Are you sure you want to announce the engagement tonight?" Dylan asked, adjusting the lights in the main room. "Isn't that a lot for one night?" "That's exactly why I want to announce it tonight," Harper replied, arranging flowers on the tables. "I want everyone who believed in us to know we made it, in business and in life." The restaurant was decorated with a perfect mix of elegance and warmth. Golden lights created a magical atmosphere, and the aroma from the kitchen promised an unforgettable evening. The first guests to arrive were Elena and her investors, followed by Marcus and the entire team from the ivory table. Clara brought a bouquet of flowers with a card that read, "For the waitress who became the chef of her own destiny." "Have you seen how many people came?" Lila asked, arriving fashionably late but stunning in a red dress that definitely turned heads. "There's a line down the sidewalk." "Leela, you look beautiful," Harper said, hugging her. "Thank you for being here." "I wouldn't miss this even if Chicago were invaded by aliens," Lila grinned. "By the way, I prepared a speech, and before you say no, I've already told everyone I'm speaking." Harper laughed, knowing it was useless to argue. The evening flowed perfectly. Harper and Dylan moved from table to table, sharing stories, serving special dishes, and simply enjoying the moment. The menu for the night was a culinary journey, from the first risotto Harper ever made for Dylan to sophisticated dishes that reflected the restaurant's growth. Around 9 o'clock, Dylan tapped a spoon against a glass, drawing everyone's attention. "Friends," he began, "Harper and I want to thank all of you for being here, for believing in us, and for supporting us through the hard times. And we have something to share," Harper continued, holding out her hand where the ring sparkled under the lights. "We're getting married." The room burst into applause and shouts of joy. Lila, of course, was the first to yell, "I knew it! I always knew it!" Then she turned to the other guests. "I'm the one who brought them together, just so you all know." "Lila," Harper began, "it's true. If it weren't for me sabotaging that awful blind date, these two never would have met. I'm the official matchmaker in this story." Everyone laughed, including Harper and Dylan. It was impossible to be upset with Lila when she was so clearly happy for them. Just then, the restaurant door opened and Robert and Margaret Hayes walked in hesitantly. The room went silent. Dylan stiffened beside Harper, but she squeezed his hand, giving him strength. Robert stepped closer to the couple, Margaret a few steps behind. He looked different, less imposing, more human. "Dylan," he said quietly. "Harper, we were hoping we could speak with you." "Dad?" Dylan replied cautiously. "We came to apologize," Margaret said, stepping forward, "for what we did, for the lies, for the way we tried to tear down something you built with love." Harper looked at Dylan, then at his parents. "I've realized something over the past few months," Robert continued. "I spent my whole life focused on money, reputation, and keeping up appearances. And I nearly lost my son because of it." "Robert saw an interview you gave on television," Margaret said to Harper, "about the restaurant, about your dreams," and he cried. Robert looked embarrassed, but he didn't deny it. "I saw the passion in your eyes when you spoke about food, about the restaurant, the same passion Dylan has always had, and I never understood. I realized you didn't take my son away from me, you brought him back to life." Dylan was clearly moved. "Dad, the money, the business empire, none of it matters if my son isn't happy," Robert said, looking directly at Harper. "And it's obvious you make him happy in a way I could never understand or give him." Margaret stepped closer to Harper. "Could you forgive us, and maybe let us be part of your lives?" Harper looked at Dylan, who gave a small, almost invisible nod. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said, "especially family." The hugs that followed were hesitant but heartfelt. The guests, who had been watching in respectful silence, began to applaud again. "And now," Lila shouted, always ready to break overly emotional moments, "let's eat, because food gets cold, and love stories are even better on a full stomach." The rest of the night was pure magic. Music, laughter, stories being told, and plans being made for the future. Later, after the last guests had left and they were cleaning up, Harper came out of the kitchen wearing a new apron. On the front, embroidered in gold letters, it said, "Chef of his heart." Dylan stopped stacking chairs and stared at her. "Where did you get that?" "Lila had it made. She said I needed something to make my status official." Dylan walked over to her, a smile playing on his lips. "Chef of my heart, huh?" He pulled her closer. "So what's on the menu today?" "A future seasoned with love, a pinch of adventure, and lots of laughter," Harper replied, wrapping her arms around his neck. Dylan kissed her gently, then looked into her eyes. "You know," he said, "my favorite recipe in life is you. Even when I burn dinner, especially when you burn dinner." They laughed, kissed again, and danced slowly in the middle of the empty restaurant, surrounded by the aromas of a perfect night and the promise of many more to come. What did you think of Harper and Dylan's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And don't forget to check out more touching stories by clicking here at the end of the video.